From the very first day we enter the education system, we are actively conditioned to believe in a highly specific and ultimately flawed formula for success. We are systematically told to keep our heads down, get good grades, go to a respected university, secure a stable corporate job, and work as hard as humanly possible until we reach the traditional retirement age. We are taught by our parents, our teachers, and society at large that hard work is the direct equivalent of financial success. But if we pause for just a moment and observe the real world, this equation completely falls apart under scrutiny. If hard work truly equaled wealth, then the nurses working back-to-back 12-hour night shifts in the National Health Service, the delivery drivers running up and down flights of stairs all day in the freezing rain, and the builders doing back-breaking labor on construction sites in the middle of winter would logically be the wealthiest people in the country. Instead, they are the demographic feeling the most extreme and crushing pressure from the ongoing cost of living crisis, rising energy bills, and relentless inflation. Meanwhile, the individuals who sit at the top of the economic pyramid seem to work significantly less in terms of physical exertion, but they manage to compound their wealth at an astonishing and exponential rate. This stark reality proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that the economic system we are operating in does not reward physical effort. It rewards leverage. It rewards strategy. And most importantly, it rewards the ownership of productive assets. To truly understand why most hardworking people never get rich, we need to examine personal finance through the lens of corporate financial analysis. If you treat yourself as a business and look at your personal income statement, the structural flaws of being an employee become immediately obvious. When you have a traditional job, you are essentially a business with only one client, which is your employer. You are trading your most finite resource, which is your time, for a fixed amount of currency. It is a direct and linear transaction. You give an employer 40 hours of your week, and they give you a predetermined salary. The fundamental problem here is that your time is strictly finite. You only have 24 hours in a day. You must sleep, you must eat, and you need time to recover. Because your time has a hard, unbreakable limit, your gross revenue also has a hard, unbreakable limit. Even if you are the most dedicated employee in the entire company, taking on every single available hour of overtime and sacrificing your weekends, you are still playing a restricted game with an absolute ceiling. You can never mathematically work 1,000 hours in a single week. The wealthy operate on a completely different financial paradigm. They do not trade time for money. They trade value for money. They build or acquire assets and systems that generate revenue entirely independently of their physical presence. When an investor or a business owner goes to sleep, their assets are still functioning and producing cash flow. When an employee goes to sleep, their income generation immediately drops to zero until they clock back in the next morning. Furthermore, the way income statements are structured for individuals versus corporations dictates who becomes wealthy. A traditional employee receives their gross pay, but before they even see a single penny, the government steps in. Through the pay. As you earn system, the government extracts income tax and national insurance directly from the source. The employee is then forced to manage their operating expenses, things like rent, food, and transport, using whatever net income is left over. A corporation operates in the exact reverse order. A business generates gross revenue. It then deducts all of its operating expenses before paying any tax. The business is only taxed on the net profit that remains at the very bottom of the income statement. This structural advantage allows business owners and investors to reinvest their cash flow into further growth before the tax authority takes its share, whereas the hard-working employee is bled dry before they even begin. To fully grasp why hard-working individuals in the United Kingdom stay trapped in the rat race, We must deeply examine the silent wealth killers operating constantly in the background. The first and most aggressive of these wealth killers is the UK tax system combined with fiscal drag. The psychological genius of the pay-as-you-earn system from the perspective of Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs is that you never actually touch your full salary, so you never truly feel the pain of handing it over. It is an invisible extraction. But the burden is staggering. As inflation pushes wages up slightly on paper, the government has deliberately frozen tax thresholds. This phenomenon is known as fiscal drag. It means that millions of hardworking people are being dragged into the higher 40% tax bracket without actually experiencing any real increase in their purchasing power or quality of life. You are working harder. You are earning a higher numerical salary, but because the tax bands have not moved in line with inflation, a massive portion of your extra effort goes straight to the state. If you are a high earner in the UK, striving for professional excellence, you get punished even more severely. When you cross the £100,000 threshold, your tax-free personal allowance begins to taper away. This creates a notorious marginal tax trap. Any money you earn between £100,000 and £125,000 is taxed at an effective and devastating rate of over 60% once you factor in national insurance contributions. You are essentially working more than half of your hours in that specific bracket exclusively for the government. The harder you work to secure that executive promotion, the harder you are mathematically penalized. And then we have the student loan system, which is rarely discussed honestly in schools. It is not a traditional loan. It is essentially an additional lifelong graduate tax. Millions of young people in the UK have signed up for Plan 2 or Plan 5 loans, leaving university with £50,000 or more in outstanding debt. Because of the astronomically high interest rates applied to these loans, most graduates will never actually pay off the principal amount. Instead, they are forced to just accept an automatic 9% deduction from their salary above the threshold for the next 30 or 40 years. When you combine basic rate tax, national insurance, and a student loan, a massive chunk of your wealth-building potential is entirely wiped out before you even have a chance to pay your rent or buy groceries. The second silent killer is inflation combined with the traditional banking illusion. For decades, we have been repeatedly told that the responsible and mature thing to do is to save our money in a high street bank. We are taught that saving equals safety. But our macroeconomic reality has shifted drastically since the abandonment of the gold standard. Governments and central banks now control fiat currency, which means they have the power to print an infinite amount of money whenever they deem it politically necessary to fund deficits or stimulate the economy. When the central bank expands the money supply, the intrinsic value of the currency you already hold in your bank account immediately decreases. This is precisely why a £100 grocery shop buys significantly less volume today than it did 5 years ago. If you are diligently saving your hard-earned money in a standard savings account, giving you 1 or 2% annual interest, but the true rate of inflation is running at 5 or 6% or even higher, you are not actually saving money. You are guaranteed to lose purchasing power. Your money is slowly bleeding its value every single day. It sits idle in that account. The traditional advice of saving your way to wealth is mathematically impossible in a high inflation environment. You are trying to fill a bathtub with a massive hole in the bottom. We must also address the ultimate British financial delusion, which is the housing market. The traditional UK dream is to get on the property ladder. Buy a nice house with a massive 35-year mortgage and consider that brick-and-mortar structure your greatest financial asset. But if we return to strict financial analysis and look at a personal balance sheet, your primary residence is actually a massive liability on your monthly cash flow statement. An asset is strictly defined as something that puts money into your pocket every month without requiring your continuous physical labor. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. Your primary home does not pay you a dividend. It does not deposit cash into your bank account. In fact, it constantly drains your liquid capital through relentless mortgage interest payments. Mandatory structural maintenance council tax and home insurance. It only ever becomes a realized financial asset if you decide to sell it or downsize decades later in life. Until that day comes, it is a highly illiquid liability that ties you to a specific geographical location and forces you to remain dependent on your monthly salary just to avoid repossession. True wealth building requires the aggressive acquisition of highly liquid assets that generate continuous compound growth or monthly dividends such as index funds, dividend-paying stocks, or profitable automated businesses. Beyond taxes and inflation, there is the psychological trap of consumer debt and lifestyle creep, which keeps the working class and the middle class completely paralyzed. In the UK, we possess a massive toxic culture of keeping up appearances. As soon as someone receives a pay rise or secures a minor promotion, their immediate behavioral instinct is to upgrade their lifestyle to match their new income level. They move into a slightly bigger apartment in a slightly better postcode. They start eating out at more expensive restaurants. They buy designer clothing. And most dangerously, they finance a brand new car. The personal contract purchase. Commonly known as the PCP car finance epidemic, is one of the primary reasons hardworking professionals have absolutely zero net worth. People are taking out complex financial agreements on rapidly depreciating liabilities just to look successful on the motorway. They are paying £500 a month for a luxury vehicle they do not actually own while paying exorbitant interest rates on top of the depreciation. This constant endless upgrading of lifestyle means that monthly expenses always automatically rise to meet monthly income. You can earn £50,000, £80,000, or even £150,000 a year. But if your outgoings are perfectly matching your incoming revenue, you are fundamentally in the exact same precarious financial position as someone earning minimum wage. You remain entirely dependent on your next paycheck to survive the month. You are simply living a more luxurious and stressful version of poverty. To permanently break out of this exhausting cycle, we must completely change our operational framework and understand the ultimate separator between the struggling middle class and the extremely wealthy. That separator is the concept of leverage. Archimedes famously stated, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." Leverage is simply the ability to multiply the output of your effort. If you have no leverage, you are trying to move a massive boulder with your bare hands. Hardworking people rely entirely on the leverage of their own physical body and their own time, which we have already mathematically established is severely limited. In the modern digital economy, there are 4 primary types of leverage that you must aggressively pursue. The first and most accessible type is capital. Capital is money working for you. When you take a portion of your monthly salary and invest it into the global stock market, you are deploying capital leverage. Your money goes out into the world, buys fractional shares in highly profitable global corporations, and those companies work tirelessly to make you richer. They hire the smartest engineers, they innovate new technologies, they sell products globally, and they return that generated value to you, the shareholder. The money works 24 hours a day. It does not need a lunch break. It does not complain, and it never asks for sick leave. In the UK, we are incredibly fortunate to have the Stocks and Shares Individual Savings Account, or ISA. This is a legally protected government wrapper that allows every citizen to invest up to £20,000 every single tax year, and crucially, any capital gains or dividend yields you generate within that specific account are completely shielded from Her Majesty's revenue and customs forever. Failing to utilize an ISA allowance is arguably the single biggest financial mistake a working professional can make in their lifetime. The second type of leverage is labor. This is the oldest and most traditional form of leverage in human history. It simply means employing other people to execute the work for you. You build a business entity, you design the operational systems, and you hire staff to run those systems. While this form of leverage is undeniably effective for building immense wealth, it is also incredibly difficult to manage and scale smoothly. You have to deal with complex payroll systems, human resources, disputes, office politics, sick pay maternity leave, and unavoidable human error. Furthermore, in the UK, employing people comes with significant additional costs, such as mandatory employer national insurance contributions and workplace pension enrollments. Labor is a permission-based leverage, meaning you constantly need other human beings to actively agree to work for you and follow your instructions. The real wealth revolution of our current generation, the one that has created self-made billionaires faster than any other time in human history, comes from the third and fourth types of leverage, which are code and media. These are the ultimate forms of leverage because they are entirely permissionless. You do not need anyone's approval to utilize them, and crucially, they have a marginal cost of reproduction that is as close to zero as mathematically possible. Code refers to software engineering and algorithms. A single programmer can sit in their bedroom and write a piece of software, a mobile application, or a digital analytical tool. Once that foundational code is written, it can be distributed and sold to one person, or it can be sold to 10 million people. The physical effort required to serve 10 million digital customers is almost exactly the same as the effort required to serve just one single customer. That is the definition of infinite scale. Media is the fourth type of leverage, and it is exactly the mechanism you are engaging with by watching this video right now. A person can sit in front of a camera, record a comprehensive video explaining a complex financial concept and upload it to a global internet platform. The creator performs the hard work exactly once. But that specific video can be watched by 100 people in London, 1,000 people in Manchester, and 1 million people across the entire globe simultaneously while the original creator is fast asleep. The media acts as a tireless digital worker, continuously spreading ideas and generating advertising revenue endlessly without requiring a monthly salary. If you ever want to permanently escape the trap of the 40-hour workweek, you must find a way to apply either code or media leverage to your professional life. You must stop relying purely on your own physical effort and start building scalable systems. So how do you actually unrig this economic game and start moving towards genuine financial freedom without falling for fake online gurus or incredibly risky cryptocurrency gambles? It requires a slow, intensely boring, and highly disciplined approach. Wealth generation is almost never an overnight event. It is a lifelong process of systematically shifting your personal identity from being a passive consumer to becoming an active producer and a strategic investor. Step 1 is gaining absolute and ruthless control over your personal cash flow. You cannot build a fortified castle on a foundation of loose sand. You must track exactly where every single pound is going each month. You need to aggressively eliminate all forms of bad debt. You must cut up the high-interest credit cards, clear the predatory buy now, pay later schemes, and desperately get rid of the expensive, depreciating car finance. You have to swallow your pride. Stop trying to look wealthy to impress strangers you do not even like, and start living significantly below your actual means. The mathematical gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only thing that will ever save you. That specific gap is your only wealth-building ammunition. If you get a promotion at work, do not increase your lifestyle spending under any circumstances. Keep living exactly like you were on the lower salary and channel 100% of that newly generated money directly into acquiring productive assets. Step 2 is building your capital leverage through disciplined exposure to the global stock market. You absolutely do not need to be a Wall Street financial genius to execute this successfully. Trying to analyze and pick individual winning stocks is a fool's errand for the vast majority of retail investors. Instead, you must focus your capital entirely on broad market passive index funds. An index fund is simply a financial basket that holds tiny fractional pieces of thousands of different global companies simultaneously. By buying into a broad index like the Standard & Poor's 500 or a FTSE Global All-Cap Fund, you are essentially buying a microscopic slice of the entire productive global economy. As human civilization inevitably progresses as technology advances, as efficiency increases, and as these companies innovate, those broad funds historically go up over the long-term horizon. You must set up an automated direct debit every single month. You automate the investment process, completely removing human emotion from the equation, and you let the mathematical miracle of compound interest do the heavy lifting over the next 20 to 30 years. It is an incredibly boring process to watch, and that is exactly the reason why it is so highly effective. Step 3 is aggressively increasing your baseline earning potential by acquiring high-income skills that have the capacity to scale. You cannot simply budget your way to immense wealth if your primary income is fundamentally too low. You have to make yourself undeniably more valuable to the open marketplace. The free market does not care whatsoever about how hard you work or how much you sweat. It only cares about the rarity and the specific utility of the problems you are capable of solving. Digging a ditch in the rain is incredibly hard physical work, but almost anyone is capable of doing it. So the market pays minimum wage. Restructuring a multinational corporation's tax strategy, interpreting complex income statements, or designing a modern flat vector infographic architecture is significantly less physically demanding, but very few people possess the intellectual capital to do it correctly, so the market pays an absolute fortune. You need to sacrifice your unproductive evenings and your leisurely weekends to learn skills that have high leverage attached to them. Learn advanced data analytics. Learn technical graphic design. Learn software engineering or master complex financial forecasting. Move away from routine tasks that require purely physical presence and move rapidly towards complex tasks that require specialized technical knowledge. Ultimately, the core reason most hardworking people never get rich is because they have been fed a lifelong narrative that benefits the economic system rather than the individual. The modern economy desperately needs millions of hardworking people to blindly accept the PAYE Tax Trap to finance vehicles they cannot afford, and to keep the endless wheels of consumerism turning efficiently. The system inherently requires you to remain financially illiterate, so you keep showing up to a job you fundamentally dislike to pay for consumer goods you do not actually need. Getting rich is not about grinding harder than everyone else around you. It is about waking up looking clearly at the board and realizing you have been playing the wrong game with the wrong set of rules. It is about understanding the brutal mathematics of taxes, understanding the silent theft of inflation, refusing to take on toxic consumer debt, and aggressively acquiring assets that produce infinite leverage. Once you stop trading your precious finite time for a constantly depreciating fiat currency and start trading your capital for productive assets that continuously buy back your freedom, your entire reality will change forever.